together for the regular meeting of Tuesday, September the 12th, 2017. Let's all say the pledge. Let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ask Secretary Gregory to please call the roll.
Chairman Frank Fox.
Present.
Vice Chairman Lynn Kraut.
Here.
Secretary David Gregory here. Mr. Greg Elwood.
Here.
Mr. Larry Petty. Here. Mr. Keith Bell.
Mr. Bell contacted me and said he'd be 15 to 20 minutes late tonight.
Okay. Mr. Lee Smith.
Here.
Everybody's here. You have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
All right. We have a quorum. Item 4 on the agenda is disclosure of ex parte communication. Does anybody want to tell about their conversations with the citizens relative to any matter or whoever on this on the agenda tonight that might influence your vote one way or other that you need to share with us? All right, let the record show that there's no ex parte communication disclosed. Does that include you, Mr. Bell?
That includes me.
Let the record note Mr. Bell is present. Thank you. Item 5, we have the minutes for the August 8th meeting. I'd like for you to read those, and I would entertain a motion that they be accepted as read.
Mr. Chairman, if we could have each of these individual minutes approved separately, I'd appreciate that.
I'm on the road, brother.
Thank you, sir.
August the 8th minutes. After you've had a minute to read them, I'd like for somebody to entertain a motion that we accept them as read.
I move that we accept the August 8th, 2017 minutes of the Planning Commission as they exist.
Mr. Bell and Mr. Gregory. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, let that show as unanimous, please. All right. Gentlemen, we'll consider August 29, 17 minutes. If you had an opportunity to read them, entertain a motion to accept them.
Make a motion to accept August 29th Planning Commission meeting.
Mr. Gregory's made a motion. Do I hear a second?
I second it.
All right. We have a second. Mr. Elwick, okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We're down to action items, and I'll turn the floor over to our illustrious city planner.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a handout, if you would take one and pass it on down here. We have a copy of the subdivision plat. Actually, this is being considered as a replat. And also, there's a follow-up second sheet on there that has a map of the parcel and the abutting parcel. This is a little bit, this is a cleanup issue. The city issued a building permit for an accessory structure that was in fact intended as an accessory structure to the commercial parcel and business behind the parcel that it was constructed on. And while they're all zoned C1, the rear parcel is the one that actually has an active business. The front commercial parcel is grandfathered with a non-conforming residential use as a double wide or a manufactured home, I don't recall which, but nevertheless, in order to issue the certificate of occupancy, we asked the property owner, Mr. Denton, if he would essentially realign his property lines. That way it would bring this accessory structure into conformity, and it would be included in the commercial parcel. What's a little unusual, and I'm hoping that our attorney can share any of his thoughts on, is that while Mr. Denton is replatting the one parcel to carve out the lands that the accessory structure is on, Mr. Denton is intending to, and you'll see this on the second sheet, with the surrounding parcel of combining the three parcels, the accessory structure parcel and the two parcels that he has his commercial business on, into a single parcel by deed. So he has created his surveyor has created a legal description. I understand the reason behind this is probably to save money, so he doesn't have to set all the corners and whatnot, since he already has a legal description. He can just take the legal description with a quick claim deed to the recorder's office, record it, and then the assessor's office will create a new parcel to combine the parcels, and including the accessory structure parcel that is being removed from the front parcel, the resident parcel. And if I turned you all around on that one too many times, I apologize.
So it's 0.84 acres, which is currently where the house is located, that's being requested to be rezoned to C1.
We're not rezoning anything tonight. That already is a C1 zoning.
Okay.
It's just a non-conforming of the pre-existing residence on a commercial parcel back when the city created their zoning in '99.
So the 0.84 acres is currently C1.
All of it is C1.
All of it's C1.
What we're doing is we're carving off a portion of that .8 parcel, .8 acre parcel, to move it over to the commercial parcel. And then they're combining all three by deed.
Is that little offset in the corner?
That is it, yes, sir.
Removing that.
This little piece here, he's combining with these two pieces as well into a single parcel. And based on what was submitted to us, including a plat that's acceptable to the city, I'm recommending to approve this replat and to recognize that Mr. Denton will combine the three parcels by deed.
Should your motion be approving subject to him combining the parcels by deed?
That's an excellent point.
It wouldn't make any,
Then the question would be,
make any difference.
when do they record the combined parcel deed, before or after the replat? Before or after you record the plat?
Should be before, I believe.
Okay.
If you did it before, would you have to come back? Would you not? Because then that would be part of the deal. He done it one way and then, or would it? I'm asking a question.
Well, I think you're right.
There's no time limit. If we grant this, if we pass this, or get approved, the rest of the days, we replat this, the yellow here would be 2301 and 2300 and 23-04.
No,
Even
what,
before he does it, this what you want right here is in the yellow.
no, what's in the yellow is what's owned by the applicant. What's on the first sheet of the plat, the .84 acres, is the newly created parcel. He's reducing lot 1 by carving out that lower right-hand box.
I don't think there's no harm, no foul, if we carry it on and go with it, but like I said, there is no time limit that I know about.
Well, it's to his advantage to get it filed, get it recorded, so, you know.
Well, the city won't issue a certificate of occupancy on the accessory structure until we address and approve and record this replat. But the question that I had for council was, in what order should the recordings occur for the combination of lots by deed and then the replat, as you stated, or that's your recommendation? Okay.
Maybe I'm lost, but why didn't you just replat to start with and skip this step?
Because he would then have to set, his surveyors by state law would have to set each of the corners of the entire lump of lands. And evidently, he didn't want to go there. And that's okay. This is a different way to do it.
Just an extra step,
But-
sort of, whatever.
But he's evidently, I would estimate that he saves money by not having to have the corners set.
All right, gentlemen, we've heard the conversation, we've heard the recommendation. I would entertain a motion that, or is there a motion relative to this replat of the Denton Minor subdivision?
Move to accept replat as presented.
All right, Mr. Crouch has moved that we accept the replat,
Second.
and Mr. Gregory has seconded.
Discussion.
Is there any other discussion, any further discussion?
Mr. Wheeler, what, is that the correct format that this motion should be in?
Well, I was just thinking, you approve it subject to him combining those three parcels in that quitclaim deed that he's talking about, and I think the word "subject to" would be reasonably significant in your motion.
Withdraw your motion. Then you can withdraw it.
Withdraw your motion. That's a lot of work.
Yeah. I'll withdraw the second.
Withdraw the motion, just add the
All right.
subject to.
Let the record,
Make sure we word it.
let the record show that the motion and second has been withdrawn. Now, Mr. Crouch has a motion to make.
How you want it worded? Subject to?
Right.
Subject to that all parts being replatted into one parcel.
That's right, subject to the three parcels being combined by the quitclaim deed that, as I understand it, the owner proposed to do.
Combine and record.
Yes.
You still want a second?
I will.
All right, Mr. Gregory still wants to second, so let the record show that the motion's been made and second. Is there any further discussion? Thank you, Lawyer Bell. All right, if you're ready for question, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Let the record show that it passed by unanimous vote, please, ma'am. 6B.
Sir,
Mr. Ball.
Mr. Chairman, we have a commercial site plan for CEC Electric. They're located just up the road to the north of us before the ridge at 1385 Louisville Highway. We're handing out it was a multi-sheet set, but the relevant information is on the first sheet for you. Essentially, the site plan, including parking and retention and whatnot. More importantly, their access to Louisville Highway as well as Ryder Road. And then the second sheet will be the elevations, which appear to meet our previously approved standards by this board. But in this case, the applicant has his engineer here as a representative. If you have any questions for him, it's this gentleman in the blue. I believe, Leaf. L-E-A-T, Leaf, thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, if there are any questions, the engineer is present. It's a 4,800 square foot office warehouse building. Looks like we have at least one loading dock, but two overheads. I believe they're a supply and installation company. They have been doing business in a limited matter on the same site out of their construction offices, which were approved by the city nearly a year ago. This,
Extra. We've got them.
You got it.
Yes.
our engineer has reviewed this and finds the package substantially complete. However, I would like to ask for a conditional approval tonight, pending any cleanup that the engineers may need to reach on the final set of the plans. But our consultant engineer with OHM is satisfied that whatever other minor revisions or cleanup needs to happen shouldn't be an issue. But I would appreciate a conditional approval based on our engineer's final approval or recommendation to accept these plans.
They're just gonna have a fairly significant slope that exits off of 31 down to the building elevation, or?
Slope right off of 31. Slope right off of 31 will not be that terrible. Now, once you hit the boundary line, the slope will be. This, what you got printed out for you right here, doesn't show the contour.
Yeah, but doesn't show. But the building will probably sit, it'll sit down below road grade.
It will, yes, sir. The finished floor is on there, 593.7. But that is several feet down below. Yeah.
That's the lay of the land.
It is, yes, sir.
And also, the applicant will be required to obtain a commercial driveway permit from the Tennessee Department of Transportation, but they need to have our blessing before they can submit to TDOT. I don't imagine that there's going to be many changes to that driveway, but it's up to the state since it's their road. But the state now requires city concurrency or city acceptance before they'll review and issue a driveway connection permit.
Makes sense.
What was the condition that you wanted to add?
Pending the completion of our engineering review and acceptable revisions.
Should we include TDOT approval for the condition?
That'll be worked out through our final approval,
Right.
through the revisions, yes, yes. So if the state then requires any kind of changes to their connection, then those will come back to the city as well, but that's an administrative exercise. Unless you all have a direct objection to what they're proposing today on that driveway. Had they been further up the hill, we may have had a little bit of more heartburn on it, but, and then considering most of their deliveries and their internal fleet is either straight truck or vans, so we don't anticipate.
Loading dock.
We don't anticipate a whole bunch of tractor trailers turning actions on the highway there.
So you're expecting most of it on Raider Road?
Either way, they have either option. Well, we are not restricting them at this point unless the state does.
Well, you can't restrict them on 31, I don't guess.
The state can, we can't.
Right. State.
We
But
can't on
state's got
Raider
nothing.
Road, though.
But we could on Raider Road, but I don't think that's necessary.
Is the building, the building facing 31, the two big double doors?
That's,
No, sir.
that's south. That's a side elevation.
Oh, okay, that's why it's facing north.
The top elevation there, be facing the road, you'll see the
Okay.
two double doors, they're 6 foot.
This one.
Right.
Yes.
And this is facing north.
That's a side, that's facing south.
North, if it's, according to this is north of here.
Right. That's this side here, that's this side of the building, which faces south.
This is the concrete.
Okay, well, this is the building.
Yeah, that's the building there,
Oh,
yeah.
it's facing, okay.
This is the side that faces north, the plain side.
Okay.
And ideally, when this site is built, more than likely they'll put the rear of the building on that same side, so that you have two rears facing one
Is
another.
that gonna be just gravel, or is this gonna be grass, or what, the other property right there?
It'll be grass.
Okay. Maybe catch some of the runoff?
Because it does abut commercial properties, there's no requirement for any additional buffering that you would typically find with residential.
Maybe this would encourage somebody else to build over the building lots up there.
That would be nice.
What, are we supposed to do the motion for this?
No, it's Bob.
I'm on break right now.
Okay. I got in trouble for that once, so I didn't know.
He's getting all excited.
You said.
No, I think
between-
we're just analyzing. I
Kicking it.
don't think we're asking any serious questions. I mean, trying to come to a,
So with it being next to a commercial, you don't require that? is what you're saying.
Correct.
But it's
Now there are
residential above.
That is a residential use and not a zoning. That's zone commercial.
Where that house is next
Yes, sir.
door. Okay, I didn't know that. Now, are you Josh's brother?
No, we found out we are related distantly, but I never knew Josh until I met him on this job. My great-grandfather and his grandfather or great-grandfather were
How about
their
that?
sides of the birds. Never knew each other distantly.
Well, I may have to abstain from this because I dread more construction traffic on that road.
you don't have
Sorry.
to.
Don't have to
If you abstain, you can just vote no.
Well, that's not really fair, you know, but, I mean, I know Josh is doing a great job where he's at now, but if his business increases, I know it's gonna be a lot more traffic. And tractor trailers coming right road's gonna be tough.
He doesn't really want them to come right away, if that matters. And the way that we situated the dock over there, and showing a tractor trailer, they can make the turn back out to 3100.
That's what I was wondering about.
Yes, 3 lanes up there.
But don't get me wrong, he's been a good neighbor. You know, I don't have a problem with his business. I know what he's doing, he's worked very hard. And with that in mind,
And he keeps the place looking nice.
he does,
Yes.
he does.
Vote your conscience.
Well, no,
I did, last week.
the road's just so narrow, you know, it's a lane, really, it's really not a road. I mean,
Well, I think this will be another topic for the city's strategic planning. And we've talked about a number of the different roads in the city that
well, I mean, this,
could be upsized or improved.
yeah, but this doesn't affect a lot of people, so it should be down further on the list. I understand that. If you got something affecting 200 people, then that should be.
Well, this is electrical contractor, right?
Josh is an electrical contractor.
Yeah, primarily, they have the warehouses distributed, deliver the job site anyway. There's probably not a lot. Just gonna hit that
It's mainly for him to have an office and
Yeah.
a storage space.
bucket truck maybe sitting there.
That's just all I worry about is the narrowness of the road.
Well, this is just a preliminary.
Well, no, I mean, I'm all for it, you know, except for the road. That's it.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's a very good discussion. Let's call for a motion there. We're considering item 6B, the CEC Electric Commercial Site Plan. Did you say preliminary site plan?
No, this is the
This is the site plan, the site plan.
I thought I misunderstood.
I did too. Because you said we was coming back to vote something else on this, but not.
It's gonna be conditional.
We're asking for a conditional approval.
For the
that-
state.
So
So
staff.
they can get their.
No, well, so that staff and our engineer can finish their review, and whatever revisions need to be made, Andy can make those, and then we can stamp it formally approved. Or officially.
So this is preliminary.
No, it will not come back to you.
I was gonna ask.
So we're looking-
Unless you wanted to. I mean, we can.
No.
Well, I can bring it back for another consideration if you want to defer it.
No, I just didn't understand.
So motion be,
I just didn't
So
understand.
we're looking for.
I'm asking for a motion to approve conditionally for the city's engineer to accept final revisions.
I move that we accept this site plan conditioned upon our engineers approving the final administrative requirements.
I second it.
let the record show that Mr. Bell made a motion, Mr. Petty made a second. Is there any further discussion on this item? You're welcome,
No,
Mr. Smith.
I did ask permission, though.
Oh, you don't have to do that. All right, all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Let the record show it passed by unanimous vote, please. Thank you, Mr. Lee. We're on item 6C, 31W Insulation Cycle Lane Building 3 site plan.
Another handout, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Frank.
Lee.
Yeah, I said it. At first, I thought it did say Lee until he spelled it. I'm going, dang, that's Josh's last name. That's always a company.
I thought the same thing. Actually, if I may, we're on item C. Mr. Chairman, if I could ask that you continue item C until the next meeting? I got ahead of myself.
What do we do on that? We don't have to approve that, do we?
Handout
We're not
you just
ready.
give me?
This is for D, E, and F,
Oh, okay.
and G.
Don't do
What I got is
C.
I'm asking for C to be continued, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Wheeler, do we need a motion to continue an item?
Yes.
I move that we refer this till the next meeting, item 6C to the next meeting.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Bell that we continue item 6C until the next meeting. Will somebody please second that?
I'll second
Mr. Gregory has seconded. And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We have one opposed. Did you say no, or did you just burp? He just burped.
I just burped.
Excuse me.
In case the microphones didn't pick that up clearly.
These meetings are so boring, we have to entertain somehow.
Indeed.
Indeed.
Oh, my God.
Mr. Barr has the floor. We're talking about items E, F, and G. No,
D, E, F, and G.
D, E, F, and G.
All right, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'm going to ask that we consider each of these next four items individually, but I'd like to present at one time because they are all abutting, they're all within the same area, out there around the racetrack, Gideon and Kelly Willis and Bethel Road. So what I would, though, do is request that item D be continued. Actually, I'm sorry, item F. I'm getting all turned around, I apologize.
Thought you were going to withdraw that. That's what you said before the meeting.
Sir, I am really having a hard time.
Let's do it like we did C.
Okay, item D, I'm asking for a continuance. The applicant was not able to provide all of the information necessary for our review. So item D, if that could be continued.
Is D on this map?
No, sir.
So this is just E, F,
Again,
and
I'm
G.
ahead
So
of
you want it
myself.
for
E, F, and G.
And
continuance
H.
for next meeting?
Yes, please.
And just for my clarification, the dotted line is the city limits line, correct?
Yes, but we're not quite there yet. Let's get over item D.
Okay.
If we can continue that, please.
I'll make a motion to continue to the next meeting on rezoning 2044 Wilson Lane, the next meeting.
Item 6D, I second it.
You said it wasn't on here. That's right. I'm confused. All right, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Petty relative to 6D to continue to the next meeting. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Mr. Bell is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show unanimous vote to continue item D.
All right, Mr. Chairman, let me see if I can get my act together here and get this right for you. Items E, F, G, and H, I would like to present together. However, I would ask that item F, rezoning 6825 Kelly Willis Road, is being withdrawn by the applicant or the property owner. And the city agrees with the withdrawal. we concur with leaving the property with the zoning that it currently has of C1.
Which one is that? Is that the yellow
That being,
one?
that is the yellow one, yes. That is an existing zoning, and the owner can work within the permitted uses of the C1 district for what his plans are moving forward on that.
You said that was F, sir?
F, yes, is being withdrawn. It's as though it didn't exist.
Now, that's not the one Karen was questioning.
It is indeed.
No. So that's resolved.
It is resolved.
Why don't we continue on the other one?
The other three, E, G, and H, and actually, I'll start by discussing item E. That is, and if you look on your map, that is the darker shade of gray. That is the proposed intermediate industrial 2. That is actually the zoning that we're moving through an amendment with the city commission right now to add group assembly to special exception activities. Keep in mind, the racetrack has been in operation some 50-plus years, and the city continues to recognize its use irrespective of its zoning. But we would like to have it zoned appropriately. And we believe the I-2, Intermediate Industrial 2, will meet that, the use as a racetrack, particularly after they amend the I-2 to allow group assembly by special exception. So in other words, within the group assembly, they allow racing, with the exception of drag strips, which Mr. Petty recommended that we pull drag strips out of the group assembly activities. So, and it's a little tricky here because we're looking at uses as opposed to, and activities separately from what's included in the industrial. So this is almost a definition modification, if you will, for the racetrack in the group assembly for the I-2. So we're coming up behind with the change to the I-2 to allow the racetrack to do business, conforming business in the industrial 2. So there's no proposal to make any changes out at that racetrack. This, we're actually.
If it's under,
Right now, it's zone C3.
but if it's zoned, I-2, could it be
Could it be what?
for a racetrack?
It will be, yes. Yes.
This is where the racetrack is located now.
Okay, so.
It is there today.
Okay,
yes.
that's-
It is a racetrack.
That
Will be.
is
It is a racetrack, it will be a racetrack, but the zoning will say you can have a racetrack, even
The-
though they already have a racetrack.
Gotcha, the dark area
So,
is the
the dark,
racetrack.
the shaded gray, yeah. the
I'm gonna
dark
draw
I
gray.
have a couple of questions. So essentially what you're asking them to do is to move this into the new proposed
Zoning,
zoning.
yes.
All right, and then my next question is, and I didn't read all the emails, but the C1, why are we not touching on it again? Is there a specific reason?
Because Mr. Criswell believes that his vision for developing that 2-acre parcel will fit in the C1 zoning district under the permitted or special exception uses.
Are we still considering item E? Is this one wrong?
We're talking about item E, and we're also talking about F, but
Well,
we're
is
not
this
taking any
propo-
action
Is
on
this
F.
proposal right here
Yes, sir,
associated with,
with E.
okay.
The dark gray is E. But we can talk about all three.
No, sir, I just keeping my bearings here.
That's fine.
To make, I'm gonna ask the question, to make this simpler, you're going from a C3 to an I2
Correct.
for the future.
And when it was assigned to C3, it was a non-conforming use. The racetrack was never zoned appropriately.
You're getting it where it's supposed to be.
This is where it's supposed
That's
to
it.
be.
Make it so.
This is pretty much, yes.
If we're cleaning that up here on this I-2, why would we want to create a situation where there'd have to be special exceptions for the C1?
Because he's looking at a automobile service facility on that property. And automobile service facilities and repair facilities are only allowed by special exception in the C1 district. That is the only zoning in the city that allows for
That answers my question.
auto repair.
He's looking to the future.
Yes.
Which makes sense, but nobody had explained that to me.
Essentially, and I'll lay it out for you, and Mr. Criswell isn't here, but this was also, the city is cooperating with this and supports these changes, or in this case, no change on the C1. But his discussion with us has been an automotive garage, essentially, or a service facility, repair facility for the race cars.
Does this include a storage facility? Mr. Barr, does this include a storage facility?
Which one?
For race cars down the road? Is that one reason you want to do this? Like,
It's not a storage facility, it's a repair facility.
so that's.
And it's a matter of semantics, it's just how we title it. These are not, this is gonna be a repair and service facility as opposed to mini storage.
But it's not zoned for mini storage.
It is not, and it's not his intention for mini storage.
What's it zoned right now? C1, take care of
It is
that?
C1. It is C1,
You can have a garage there.
by special exception, yes.
Who gives that special?
The BZA, the Board of Zoning
Okay,
Appeals.
now,
Well,
they
Mr.
race
Petty-
out there, they race every night of the week?
No, sir.
Do they have so many nights they can race out there?
They typically just race, I believe, Saturday night.
Okay, so they could have that garage and work on the cars and rev them up any night of the week?
Well, there are strict noise restrictions in the C1 district. So they will not be able to just rev engines flat out. It's my understanding, it's mostly wrenching and body work is what's being proposed, which falls into the C1 special exception.
So the reason we're keeping separate because his intended use doesn't apply with.
Well, we're also
Wow.
keeping it separate because it's under separate ownership.
Oh, okay.
Well, this, I think people are worried about the noise creating any more. Could this
We've already
create?
got, may I interject?
And let me finish with Mr. Smith's question. C1 has stricter noise standards than industrial or light industrial.
Okay.
And the racetrack now, they can race on Friday and Saturday night. They can't train or practice or none of that except on Tuesday.
No,
or
they can
Wednesday.
practice any day of the week,
Well,
except for Sundays,
yeah, nothing on Sunday,
unless Saturday is rained out.
right. Or Sunday's right down, then they can race on Monday.
And then it's only between 1 and 6 on Sunday.
It was.
Oh, you wrote that contract.
It was a big, it was a big deal, it was a big,
Yeah,
very big
that was a
song.
harangue when Bobby Jr. owned it,
Yes,
and we went through all that.
it's a,
I was ad nauseam.
That was back in 2012, I think, that all that went
You know,
through.
finished it up. Yeah, it started in 2010.
and then in
I think so.
2014, we had pretty good rounds right here with a couple of ladies.
I think Mr. Gregory was part of that one.
He was telling me about it. He was having nightmares over here.
Yeah,
I still lose sleep.
it's okay, that's all I had to say.
Okay, I'm done.
All right, Mr. Petty, you.
No, I thought I was just gonna tell Lee about the racetrack, that's all.
Well, while we're at it, what about the LI1?
Okay.
Industry.
It was some years ago that the parcel between Bethel Road and Kelly Willis Road was rezoned to light industrial 1. And then that was sold by the Barron family to Fletchline. It's currently vacant. Now, north of Kelly Willis Road, we have 2 parcels there under separate ownership. Mr. Criswell owns the property on the left, and the Barron family owns the property on the right that's at the corner. Both of those individuals would like to rezone from R1 to the light industrial 1. And the city supports that as almost a buffer, if you will, between the racetrack, industrial 2, and the surrounding community. So essentially, then you get into warehousing, office and warehousing, next to a more intense use. So it works as that, and I've used the term many times, a transitional zoning. So a transitional intensity. So as you have the intensity, which is our most intense use in the city, is that racetrack. There's nothing more intense in the city beyond that. So you step your way down so that you don't all of a sudden have racetrack right next to
You got a buffer.
resident. You've got your buffer. Yes. So those two parcels are being requested. Again, they're separate applications, but I thought it would be appropriate that we discuss them all concurrently and together. But the action that you all need to take tonight has to be separate for each of the three parcels. So the industrial 2 and then each of the light industrial 1s.
Okay, public notice. Public notice is required for the city commission vote,
That's correct, yes,
but
sir.
not for the planning commission.
Yes, sir. Now, I have been in contact with some of the neighboring property owners out there.
Do we have
And we
signs
have
posted up there?
Not at this time, not until it goes to the commission.
Okay, you're asking us to make a recommendation.
You are making a recommendation to the city commission for the
Without
rezone.
having the public, the neighbors here in this R1.
At this point, correct. So, and this body, I don't think necessarily needs to be weighted that heavily on the public opinion. You are, as a planning commission, looking at the use and the activities as opposed to whether it's offensive to the neighbors and the residents out there. That's my opinion.
I'm going back to the situation that Mr. Gregory and I had to face back in 2009 and 2010 with the racetrack. And there was a lot of clamor about the noise, and this is a very sensitive area. So quite honestly, I'm going to have to abstain from the vote or vote no simply because of the lack of public notice.
I think on this,
I know it's not required,
Yeah.
but I think as a matter of courtesy, sometimes we should put the sign up so we can start hearing from the public as to whether or not in these sensitive areas that we have a history of the neighbors objecting vehemently about what goes on up there.
Well, at least two of the more community-involved neighbors are aware and have been in contact
There is
with
a
them.
buffer there.
Now,
Yeah.
and you mentioned noise, Mr. Bell. And this has been recognized by Mr. Criswell, the owner of the racetrack, is that intermediate industrial 2 has a different noise standard than the racetrack noise standard. The racetrack noise standard is a maximum of 100 decibels at 100 feet from the noise source. Industrial 2 has a requirement of no more than 80 decibels at any property line. So that being like, for instance, Kelly Willis Road or any of the neighboring properties, with the property owner's permission, we could go onto those properties and take readings at the property line. And evidently, Mr. Criswell has been out there with his meter and has confirmed that Saturday night, he did not exceed that maximum of 80 decibels at the property lines. So we feel that might even be a stricter standard to meet than just the 100 decibels at 100 feet.
So then the proposal to change this zoning, it's not gonna help noise abatement anyway, because he's below it anyway.
He's already below it, but
So-
it actually sets the bar a little lower for the neighbors. So in other words, whereas he could bump up against that 100 decibels at 100 feet, there's no saying that it couldn't be 100 decibels at 500 feet. Whereas now, he needs to meet the standard of 80 decibels at the property line. And the distance from the track to Kelly Willis Road is right about 200 feet. So in my opinion, there's actually a stricter noise standard with the I-2 than under the existing racetrack ordinance. I think that's
Okay.
chapter 10.
All right, well, with that
So
too.
so there is benefit.
I'm
I
just talking
think, to
about
that.
these other proposals you're talking about for these properties. You felt like that if industrial buildings was built there, that would help
And that would
control
also
the
help
noise.
shield, yes, that
Shield the
would
noise, but
absorb.
he's already below it anyway.
He is already below the legal limit.
And then this I-1, I guess, Ridgetop? Is that theirs?
Ridgetop, yes, and that's the city of
I
Ridgetop.
know,
They
what
have-
is their I-1, do you know?
I do not.
We need to know what that I-1 is before I would think.
I believe, and I just skimmed through because they just recently posted their zoning ordinance online. I skimmed through it, and it appears to be similar to our intermediate industrial 2.
I'm just curious.
But it's mostly warehousing.
Well, that's still a field there, and then there's a residential house, and then there is commercial on that corner of Woodruff.
Yes.
But that one next to our city limits is still just a field. So I'd like to know what that I-1 is of Bridgetops.
I can forward that to you.
If this, right here, on this piece right here,
Yes.
the LI.
That's existing. That's light industrial 1 for the city.
I was gonna tell, Mr. Bell that Miss Chadwick was one that was really, had a real problem with the racetrack years ago. And when this gentleman, she was at the meeting, when this gentleman talked about, there was 2 of them, and they were gonna build storage warehouses, and then a little small office for like 25 of their workers. And she was all for that because of the noise at that time that would help block, where they said they were gonna put it. And she said that would help block her noise, and she lives somewhere close to this R1, right in here, right in that area. So you was asking about that. So she was more for that, and of course, she wanted it.
When did this conversation occur?
In last of 14, somewhere in 14, when we were having a trouble with, when the city was having a trouble with the residents up there, and Tim, the mayor, would know more exactly about the date, and he could tell you, because him and Mr. Chadwick had long conversations.
Well, I can tell you that Ms. Chadwick and I have had multiple conversations on this as recently as 2 weeks ago.
Mr. Barr, help me out. I'm having a hard time getting dizzy looking back and forth. Associate the plats with the agenda.
The dark gray is,
Criswell and Barron is up here at the top, right?
well, actually, at the top, you have Criswell on the left,
Uh-huh.
and on the right is Barron.
All right, and that,
And then the dark gray is Fast Track Industries, which is Mr. Criswell and his partner. That is the
that's
dark
item
gray.
6E.
6E, yes, sir.
All right, now up at the top is Criswell, and that's item number
Criswell is item G,
G,
and
okay.
Barron is item H. And it probably would have been helpful to identify those.
Yeah,
And item H
I'll
is
remember.
And so this-
both on the north and the south side of.
No,
So there's
just the
no-
north side.
This-
The south side has already been rezoned some years ago to light industrial. That's done,
So this light industrial 1 here is
That's
not under
existing.
consideration.
correct.
Okay. CGI. E. EG8H. EG and H.
Yes, sir.
Their biggest concern then is the traffic. That's the state. That has nothing to do with
G.
You did a great job explaining, by the way.
Thank you.
All right. Is any,
it. We're gonna get him the big head.
for sake,
I'm
in deference to Mr. Smith's frustrations about a call to order, I'm gonna ask you, before we enter into these motions, and is any other further conversation that we need to have? All right. Let's look at item 6E. Rezoning of 6801 Kelly Willis Road, Robeson County, map 124, parcel 14900, from C3 to I2. Like to entertain a motion that we,
Moved, enter a positive recommendation for the change.
All right, we have a motion for a positive recommendation from Mr. Crouch.
That's for 6E, correct?
That's E, that's yes, sir.
6E, I'll second the motion.
All right, and Mr. Gregory second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. It's unanimous. All right, now, we go up to Mr. Criswell's property labeled G on the agenda, rezoning of 6820 Kelly Willis Road, Robin County map 124, parcel 300, from R1 to LI1. That's the gray on the left at the top of the page.
Right across from the racetrack.
Across from Kelly Willis from the racetrack.
6G.
Yes, sir, 6G. Uh-huh.
I'll make a motion, recommendation of approval for 6G.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Gregory that we approve, make a positive recommendation on this item 6G. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Crouch seconds it. Any other discussion? All right, I'll call for a motion. All in favor say aye. I'm crazy, I'm talking out. Call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Thank you very much. Let the record show that passed by unanimous vote.
Put me abstention on that.
Mr. Lee Smith, well, one abstention. Thank you, Mr. Smith. All right, now we're on 6H, which is the Barron property at the top of the page, adjacent to Criswell. And it's a rezoning of Kelly Willis Road tract, Robeson County map 125, parcel 13900, from R1 to LI1. All right, I'd like to entertain a motion that we,
I'll recommend a motion for 6H.
all right.
I second the motion.
Mr. Elwick is second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I abstain.
One abstention,
Two abstentions.
two abstentions. Let's have a show of hands. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that a positive recommendation or not?
It's a majority.
It's a majority, okay. We had 5.
5-2.
5,
Or 5-0-2.
yes,
5-0-5.
yeah, 5-0-2.
So that is unanimous.
Yes. It is still a unanimous?
It would be.
Okay. Let the record show it passed by unanimous vote. Thank you. I like unanimous. That's a good word. Next on the agenda is item 6I, Chapter 90 zoning amendment for residential accessory structures. Mr. Barr, please.
All right, this has been an excruciating exercise, and I appreciate, and I'll thank you in advance for your patience in reading through all 15 pages. In a nutshell, I've tried to summarize what we've done in the staff recommendation, staff report and recommendation. And we've talked, this was actually continued from the early August meeting. And that was because I wasn't able to get this to you all with enough advance notice so that you could read through it, chew through it, and have an understanding and ask questions. So y'all have had this for over a month. I have not made any changes to it. Essentially, what we have done is deconstructed the residential zoning chapter, pulled all of the residential accessory structure language out of our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5M, and created a new section, section 90-175, that incorporates all of the standards that we were able to make heads or tails out of because we had multiple conflicts, a lot of confusion, a lot of ambiguity, so it left a lot for interpretation. But ultimately, staff was challenged that we had to read through all these different rules and all these different sections, and it didn't always make sense, and because the Code of Ordinances specifically says that we are to interpret under the most restrictive standards. And in that case, in some zoning classes, it would be virtually impossible to build an accessory structure. So for years, staff kind of made do what they could with the language in there, but I committed early on to trying to clean this up. And I believe through this, with all the deletions, which are the strike-throughs in red, and then you have the underlines in red as far as what's been added. So the first thing that we've done is we've expanded the definitions of accessory buildings or structures. And we've actually classed them now. We've organized them into different classes. This is as much for our understanding, but also for the building inspector to know what he's permitting. Because like small structures under 120 square feet don't require a building permit. But above that, they do require a building permit, but then we have different types of reviews based on the size and the location and whatnot. So we've defined accessory structures more clearly, so everybody understands what an accessory structure is, the different classes of those accessory structures, and then from there, like I said, we stripped out all the language from the 6 different residential zoning districts and combined all of them into one, which is section 175. With that, we set that into 3 sections, if you will, or I'm sorry, 4 different types, not types. What's the 4 basic subsections? And that includes the location of the accessory structure, the size standard for the accessory structure, the height, and the exterior finishes. That being that the locations are, for instance, setbacks, minimum setbacks from lot lines and from the buildings. We made it more generous for the bigger parcels out there, the R1s and R2s, to locate them in even their front of their principal structures. So in other words, you have a house on 10 acres, our language said you couldn't put a barn in front. Well, really, who cares where you put the barn, as long as it's at least 10 feet off of the side property line, and it's, I think we set a limit of 75 feet from the front property line. But if you were to build a house at the very rear of your 10 acres, your barn had to be behind your house. That made no sense. So that's an example of one of the cleanup that we did on this for location.
Lynn's got a barn in front of his house. I bought the property.
Technically, Mr. Gregory does as well. But then he has a very unusually shaped lot. Now, our standards should define front yard as the area between the road and the primary structure. Now, in some cases, your house may face the back because you have a long driveway that winds around to your house, and you want to have your front facing your driveway. Or in Mr. Gregory's case, his house actually faces towards the rear, or at least to the side. So what is the definition of the front of a house? Is it
Part next to the road,
well,
regardless of what the house faces.
and that was our challenge, because we have language in the code that says
It's the road.
But our code says the front yard is defined by the front elevation, not forward of the house to the road. So that was one of those interpretive stumbling blocks that staff had. So we cleaned it up. And then size is in relation to the parcel and the type of structure. Height is pretty much reasonably limited to again, in relation to the primary structure or the activity on the property. Now, for instance, if you're R1 and you have a larger parcel, You can have a very large barn that could be 30, 35, 40 feet, for putting up your hay or hanging tobacco or whatever it may be, that it was unreasonable that we had a 2-story limit on those structures. But that's the way it's been. And then lastly, the exterior finishes. And essentially that applies to residential parcels on, like for instance, in a subdivision. We want to make sure that the accessory structure siding complements the house.
Good idea.
And not so much with the material, but with the appearance. See, for instance, we wouldn't allow, in the past, metal siding, even if it was lap siding, like vinyl siding, that looks like clapboard or whatever, but if it was metal, it was prohibited. Well, who cares what the material is? The issue is the appearance. And that's why we added language in there about horizontal slats as opposed to vertical slats. Vertical slats look like a factory or a warehouse, that is more appropriate for commercial instead of residential. So we talked about those standards, so not so much material, but appearance. And again, we've created a new section, so the meat of all this is pretty much in the last 2 pages of that section, so that you can see what the new standards are.
That's gotta be 1,000 times simpler.
It should be. It really should be. And it'll make it easier not only for staff, but it'll make it easier for our residents. And we were able to create tables that made it easy, that you could figure out what your zoning is. And honestly, you can always change your zoning as long as you conform to the other standards within the zoning class. So it makes a lot of sense. So I wholeheartedly, after hours of work on this, and staff would really appreciate your support in approving this and recommending it to the city commission for their action.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What is a pergola?
Pergola.
Pergola.
It is like a round, open-sided shed or structure. I'm sorry, no, that's a gazebo. A pergola is a square structure, is a sunscreen, a square structure without a solid roof. In other words, it just has the joists, decorative joists.
And you usually see them on decks and outdoor.
I need to get out there. I've never heard of that in my life.
Really?
Never.
I've seen it, I didn't know what it was called.
Google it, Google it, Google it.
Pergolas are
Okay.
the end thing. You got a deck.
I think I heard Mr. Fox a minute ago.
Hmm?
I thought I heard you a while ago, Rudy.
All right. Thank you for the summary and all the hard work. And I'd like to entertain a motion that item 6I, Chapter 90 zoning amendment for residential accessory structures, that we make a positive recommendation to the city commission.
Move that we make a positive recommendation to the city commissioner for 6I, the chapter 90 zoning amendment for residential accessory structures.
I'll second that motion.
And moving right along, are you ready for questions? Any question? Any question? All right, we have a motion and a second. I'm sorry.
Can I just fan it?
He's on item 7, Mr.
I'm
Chairman.
sorry. Items,
He's on item 7.
all in favor, wait a minute, we got to dispose of this motion.
Please.
We have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Let the record show a unanimous vote on item 6I. Item number 7.
All right, Mr. Chairman, there was no BZA again this month. I'll remind you that we have a couple of items that are pending out there that we may or may not hear about. But we'll send out notice when we're ready to get that going. But right now, it's been a quiet couple of months, thankfully. I bring to your attention the handout right now. Mr. Denton, when we were discussing cleaning up by replat his commercial properties up there on Highway 31W, brought to my attention that he also owns property on McMurtry Road. It is a .98 acre parcel that is currently zoned R3. There are 2 homes on it, and there have been 2 homes on it for quite a long time. However, there are 3 water taps on it. And Mr. Denton is asking, well, he asked me, and I told him I would like to defer to you all for your opinion on rezoning this down to an R4, that, which an R4 is a minimum of 20,000 square foot lots, so that he can subdivide this, so he can split the 2 homes and then create a 3rd parcel to build a 3rd home on.
Is this on the south
So-
side of McMurtry?
It is, sir, right across from Shell Road.
Thank you.
Less than an acre?
Right now, it's less than an acre, and it's R3, which is 40,000 square feet.
I don't think you can build a house there.
You can't, how you gonna build a third lot in
How you gonna build a house?
20,000?
He'd like to zone this to an R4 and I'm sorry, an R5, I misspoke. And then to be able to then have
3 lots.
3 lots. Yes, an R5 and have 3 lots, I misspoke. So a minimum of 10,000 square feet. In this case, he would have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 12 or 13,000 square feet per lot.
I would like to see how he's gonna divide the two houses.
I've shown that by the red lines. The yellow highlight is where he's proposing access and utility easements to serve the lots, because he's not looking to add any additional driveways.
Just go straight down here.
Well, did,
Yeah, just for all these are down off the road,
was he gonna come off of this, on
Yes.
this lot, off of this lot?
Correct, yes, sir. And the yellow highlight, or the yellow shading on there is for an access and utility easement, so he doesn't have to cut a new driveway in. So he'll use the existing driveway and access it from the abutting lot, the adjoining proposed lot.
Where, may I ask where the existing driveway is? according
I
to-
believe
It's over
there's
to
one
the,
here and
to the
one
west
here.
side. Look at the west side.
There's 2, actually. There's one underneath here and one here.
So you're gonna come all the way across the middle one to go to the 3rd one?
Yes, he'll come in here and then access that way.
It's already partial driveway there in front of that middle.
Well, if you were to exclude from the total square footage of these lots, the easement, how much square footage would each of these 2 existing lots have?
We believe he can attain 10,000 square feet.
So you're saying there's 10,000 square feet in this middle section around this house that excludes the easement, the yellow easement area?
We're estimating, yes. We, essentially, Mr. Denton's looking for your opinion before he spends time with the surveyor.
43,000 square feet.
43,560.
43,560.
So he's looking at a minimum of, it's gonna be tight, but
Now, how many acres did you say he
Like you
had?
said,
It's
less than-
0.98.
It's .98,
So that's less than.
so roughly 33.
It'll be easier for him to use the existing driveway than it will be to cut in a whole new one, because
Well,
And-
it'd
and we
be,
would
drops
prefer
off
that.
so bad.
it'll even be safer
Yes.
there in that.
Yeah, that's not a good,
It's not.
No.
well, that proposed third lot, that's a disaster.
we probably would not issue a driveway permit.
Well, now they're getting ready to build right down from him. If you'll notice that driveway where it's been cut,
Yes, that's outside of the city limits.
no kidding. But our city limits are on the other side of the road on down.
Actually, our city limits includes the house with the red roof, and they end there. So
That's
technically,
not
that-
what the sign says.
I don't know about the sign, I can just take the maps.
The city limits goes on up, so it's tops of the hill on McMurtry. Goes down, around. Because that's where the policemen always sit to give tickets.
Well, he might set the jurisdiction limits of the city, that.
Well, I mean, that's where the sign,
He just has to stop them in the city.
He just got stopped in the city.
he's gotta see them from the city, then he can stop them anywhere, right? If he sees you go through the city limits, he can follow you and stop you outside.
All of this is very, very disadvantaged to the property.
Mr. Denton's just looking at the option, if he can plat this and make conforming lots and build a third house. Otherwise, he may just go ahead and split it for the two homes and just leave it as it is. But he's looking at the potential of either holding it or perhaps even selling the houses. But as it is today, he can't sell the houses individually.
Can we possibly, before we really say yes or no?
I'm not asking for a yes or no, I'm just asking for your thoughts.
well, I can have-
Would you be receptive to a third
I'd like to
home?
see an engineering report before.
His engineer, see his engineering report,
Yeah.
The what?
see his engineering report.
I don't think he has an engineering report.
He's feeling the pulse of the commission at this point.
Well, I agree with Mr. Petty here that I think the pulse, my pulse could be better felt if I had his engineer's report in front of me to look to see how this property would be built upon.
You know, you're more contractor, you know. what you
If it
can,
can't-
should and shouldn't do.
I looked at buying those houses, I mean, I looked at buying that property a long time ago. It was
Not feasible
not feasible.
for you.
Yeah,
It costs more to prep it than it would to build on it.
Essentially, if, say his engineering report was positive that it could meet our standards, would you all, based on looking at the second sheet of the zoning, of the abutting zonings, would you feel comfortable with an R5? That's really what I need to know. Because there's 4 nearby, actually, there's 4 just across the street, and then there's 5 up on Shell Road.
Wouldn't
that
this be
show
out
up.
of character for that area? Because most of them, what I see here are R3s, R1s, and there is an R4.
Most are R3s, the majority of them are R3s.
Okay, explain a little bit to me about driveways situation. Would each parcel would be its own driveway?
No, that's not
We would
what-
prefer they share
Yeah.
by easement.
Yeah, I mean.
Right now, they're
way
using-
that,
We,
that third lot would be just
yes,
bad
and,
place. for a
and
driveway.
we recognize that. And-
Isn't that why the yellow's there, is where the driveway would be?
Yes.
Yeah.
The overlapping yellow is where the 3, which,
So he's already thought about that.
It it had to be contingent on sharing the driveway.
it would be, yes.
Like you asked.
And he's offered that up.
How much would that take away the right of way, I mean, the driveway from, would he still have enough room for the square footage of the home or the property?
That would have to be determined by the surveyor when he begins to
So
draw
you're
the
looking
plan.
at, you're guessing it's about 10,000 square feet.
We're guessing.
If it's an easement, you don't.
That's-
Yeah, I realize an easement does not take away from the
The
fee.
the easement only affects the setback distances.
But I want to know, I understand,
If it can be done, we would be amenable to an R5.
If I could see an engineer's report, I'd be more confident in telling you yes or no. But I'm looking at this map and what has been presented tonight, and I couldn't say yea or nay until I had an engineer's report to look at. And I'm like, Crouch here, I know that property over there. My concern is emergency personnel. How is emergency personnel gonna get down there? How are they going to?
Well, the driveway's there,
The
right?
driveway's there, but what if there's a fire there?
Just go ahead and.
Make
go
sure
ahead,
you
let
get
it
your
go off in the
thing.
hollow.
If there's a fire, it'd be a good thing.
I think I have enough of a message to take back to Mr. Denton.
Mr. Smith, go ahead. What you?
I don't know, I can see him doing it if he wanted to do it. I
Would
can
you
see it.
agree to
Yeah.
R5 up there if it could be done?
Absolutely.
You know, he come to us with an possible rezoning? He's not asking us anything?
Well, he would have to rezone it before he platted it.
Understand.
Similarly to,
All
so,
he's wanting tonight from us is.
your
if it
thoughts.
might be feasible to
Yeah,
rezone this down the road.
would you
for-
feel comfortable with R5 surrounded by
Well, Richard
R3?
didn't come to us about this.
Well, I
And he's
guess,
not asking for a whole lot. You know, all he wants to know, well, y'all might look at this down the road.
Could I
for
fit a third
rezoning,
house?
And I'd say, yes, I'd look down the road for rezoning
If he meets our
Because
standards.
he come and asked us, Mr. Denton did, so I thought that was very reasonable. And I think our reply could be reasonable for him this evening, just for down the road, if he wants to rezone. That will require a vote, Ken, not tonight.
my question becomes, what you have said in months past at other meetings about rezoning or zoning an area that's out of character to the surrounding zoning.
And that's what I'm asking you.
Yeah, an R5 is out of character for the remaining zoning in this area on Shell Road and Millersville Road. So you're presenting to us tonight a deviation from what you have told us in the past. I mean.
I'm not making a
I'm not- you're not
recommendation
making a
one way or the other.
But one thing's different.
I mean, you do have Shell Road with the.
There's
with-
2 houses already that are on .9, or, yeah, .98 acres. It's
Why don't you
already
put a third?
not, you know, that's from years ago.
Yeah, but you're wanting.
This would clean it up.
You're wanting to put a third house there. R5 allows for a third house there. Now, if he wanted to go with R4,
He couldn't, R4 would essentially work to split the lot.
yeah,
But
I don't have a
in half.
problem with R4, especially with an R4 parcel right next
And I would
to the
absolutely
street.
recommend it because there are already 2 houses on one lot.
But he really doesn't have to do that.
And R4 there is not out
You
of
can't make
character
it
to the
do it.
surrounding lots.
Correct, but it benefits him that he could then sell the houses individually. Right now,
The way those houses are positioned on property, you probably couldn't get an R4 out of one of those houses. One you could, one would almost, I'm guessing, one would almost have to be an R5 because of where the 2 houses are already positioned.
you might have to carve, you might have to do some creative carving to hit that 20,000 square feet.
20,000.
Yeah, yeah, 20, you talk for 20,000 feet, you could move this line down, maybe you could move this line close to this house and make this a 20 and down to a 20.
Yeah.
But you might be in a setback issue. That line there probably wouldn't work.
Or we could make the left-hand parcel R5 and the right-hand parcel
You could do R5, R4.
and leave that R4, move that to R4 and then
So
you have 2 lots.
So we're being presented tonight whether or not we would look at creating a high-density area on McMurtry Road. R5's high density.
3 lots being an area, sure.
I'm not real keen on it.
I think it's high density. I thought it was higher density to that anyway. I guess it's all the buildings and garages and everything else.
Well, and here's part of the problem. Many of those lots out there are non-conforming on the size. When the city zoned them in 99 to R3, they didn't meet the minimum standards.
Well, can we help him out by rezoning it in such a way that he can sell his 2 houses?
Do a 5 and a 4, and then split the lots. And then split the lots, just in half. But he may not be able to get, he probably can't get an R4 on the left-hand lot.
So make this an R5 and this an R4?
That's an option if he wants to split it.
You know, you could possibly shove this line down and.
Maybe wrap it around the back
Yeah,
some.
you might create a survey
And bump it, bump that lot line up close
I
to the
think we
house to
need
the
more
minimum
information
setback.
on what he's intending to do before we make a decision.
Not asking for a decision.
I know, but before we just skirt it on out.
Bottom line is, I'm asking if you would be amenable to the R5 in this area.
Well, undoubtedly it's not by some people, but I'd like to have a little more information.
I mean, I can't.
But
say-
before he spends any money, he'd like to know if it's viable.
Oh, I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that.
I don't like that,
Yeah, well, we're trying to stay consistent with this rezoning throughout the city. I mean, that's part of our plan, I thought.
But you understand then the option is to then perhaps split it, but then we would still need to go to an R5 on the smaller of the lots in order, before we could approve a split.
Possibly.
Possibly, yeah.
Okay.
But
Okay.
that's, I mean,
Likely.
we're sitting here saying we won't do it,
I'm
and
not
then we're saying
saying
we
we
will.
I guess what I'm saying is, I would have to have, like what you just said, a whole lot more information. I mean, with what has been presented to me tonight, I couldn't go for it. But I don't have a closed mind. I'll listen to what,
I think that's what he's asking.
they put it, with an engineering report or something, and how do you handle this third lot and the steepness of it?
I don't see how you can even develop that third lot and come
And I
out.
think
You can
Consider-
develop anything.
Yeah, but look how much you
It's
got.
just a matter of decimals and
It
zeros.
doesn't matter, you can develop anything.
Gatlinburg.
Yeah,
Went down in
that's the first thing I thought of, was Gatlinburg.
Hell, yeah.
Oh, I hope we don't.
All rise to a point of order, please. Thank you very much.
Okay, item 7C, and I'm going to really try and rock and roll through the rest of this for you. And this was at your request, Mr. Chairman, exploring the options for extending Ted Doris Road to connect with Swift Road to the north.
I didn't think
We are-
I'd get anything back this quick.
Well, it's been a month. We're looking at it, and actually, I've been in contact with White House, and it may even be beneficial to them to meet some of their roadway concurrency for some of their larger subdivisions on the west side of 65. So it's early on, we haven't spoken to any property owners. We're looking into it. It's been discussed in the past, is my understanding. I still have a whole lot of homework to do, but I wanted to let you know that I am working on it. And, but bottom line is, we're gonna need there are only two parcels separating the end of Ted Doris Road with Swift Road. And that's it. And so we would need those property owners' cooperation, and perhaps the next step, before we get too far down the road, pun intended, that we reach out and contact them and see if they're amenable to that. So at this point, again, we're working on it, but I don't have anything concrete to present to you at this point.
Is there campground in South
This is on the west side. This is
That's
just
what I-
Swift Road. South Swift is on the east side.
In Lake.
There's a mobile home park.
Well, they got a south, they got a Swift Road on the other side too.
Well, Swift, you have a mobile home park over there.
There are mobile home parks
Yeah, but
on
it's
both
just-
Swift and South Swift.
Your mobile home park is
There's no sense in it.
Bethel and Ted Doris and White.
They're just
Yes.
talking about it now. He said he ain't got nothing.
If you'd like to come in, I can show you on the maps where all the roadways go.
Oh, that's,
Bring it up on the big screen for you, you can see what we're doing.
We could talk to Mr. Jim Brinkley.
Yes, dear. What do you talk to him about?
About Ted Doris Road,
Okay.
what you want to accomplish.
Okay.
Or line it up.
Baloney.
So
I'd
I
like to
have
see us do that and
Okay.
then expand
Uh,
out through there.
Let's,
Okay, D,
Sumner
the
County.
Sumner County Urban Growth Boundary. This has kind of gone to a back burner because this was initiated by Gallatin and Hendersonville. We have since realized that the two municipalities can come to a common agreement to adjust their urban growth boundary lines without involving the rest of the municipalities within Sumner County. But next year, they're gonna wanna try and revisit, and it's about time in that 20-year cycle, to revisit the urban growth boundaries for each county, and that will also include Robertson County, which we'll be looking at as well, since we fall into both. But at this time, it's pretty much been slid to the back burner, and the hurry up and wait from Gallatin and Hendersonville. It's pretty much just back onto their lap, but they do have to have agreement from the county administrator's office on this. The county administration or the county board has to approve what they do, but it doesn't involve the other cities within the county, fortunately. So dodge that bullet for the time being. And if you wanted to, I was going to quickly brief you on where we are with some of the items that you've seen before, that you have conditionally approved or have approved. For instance, last month, or rather 2 weeks ago, we considered the replat in Cimarron Trace, Section 5 for Mr. Stokes. That has been executed and recorded, and that certificate of occupancy was issued by the city, and the transaction, the sales has occurred. And we have a very happy homeowner that is really appreciative of the city and the planning commission working so cooperatively with the builder in fixing that oopsie. We have a very happy new resident, so I'm pleased to
Now,
report that.
Moving. All right.
To the early August meeting, the McMurtry Estates replat, that was already recorded. I believe building permits have been pulled for those 2 lots by Mr. Showalter. The Hidden Creek subdivision, which also had a conditional approval, we're still waiting on the surveyor to clean that up and get it back to us, so it has not been executed and recorded. The self-storage solutions, mini-storage site plan, that is still, even though that was conditionally approved, is still back and forth between the engineers, so that's still out there. The Ted Doris rezoning is looking at a second reading by the City Commission next week, as well as the minor changes to the intermediate industrial I-2 to allow group assemblies for the racetrack, like we talked about earlier. Of course, the rezoning for McMurtry Road, that was approved. That allowed then for that minor subdivision for Hidden Creek. Again, we're still waiting on the surveyor to finish cleaning that up. The swimming pool section, that has been approved, so that is now on record. Let me see, what else do we have real quick here? And that is pretty much, everything else has been closed out, so there's nothing out there that's pending beyond really essentially Hidden Creek and a couple of second readings we're waiting on right now from the City Commission. And then finally, I want to bring to your attention that this week we received an email from the state, and this is from the Ethics Operations Officer at the Bureau of Ethics and Campaign Finance, and I'll read it to you into the record. Good afternoon, and this was sent to all the city managers, I think throughout the state and all of our municipalities. In an effort to update our records, I am emailing all cities in Tennessee to determine if they have a local or regional planning commission. Our office, the Tennessee Bureau of Ethics and Campaign Finance, handles the filing of a form called the Statement of Interest that all local office holders, including planning commission members, are required to file each year. Please respond to this email and let me know that either one, you have a planning commission and who I can contact to get a list of the members or provide a list of the members, or 2, that you do not have a planning commission. If you will recall, I believe several months ago, presented to you all the state requirement that you complete this statement of interest, and I understand it asked for some personal financial information, but evidently, and I know some of you may have put this to a back burner or declined to provide those forms to the state. You can fill them out online. I can't say one way or another, but what I can tell you is that the state is now looking into each municipality to see if their planning commission is following the state requirements.
They must be running out of
And
stuff to
the
do.
rest of that is, if you get your name, you don't do it, that's all they will find you.
Evidently, yes.
Well, as a city commissioner, we don't have to fill that.
I'm not putting money.
I believe you already filled one as a city commissioner.
Yeah.
So it would be redundant.
They're done.
I don't know their rules, if you have to file it separately, but
If you can find that out, because I was
it-
thinking.
Mr. Wheeler might be able to contribute,
I'll
but.
tell you what I've done, I asked a lawyer. I'm sorry.
I just said I can find out, I don't.
You said you
During the
asked,
academy
you
training
asked
I
a
took
real lawyer?
For commissioner, no, but I talked to a lawyer at the commission, training academy.
Stated holiday.
And they're from MTS, and I asked the same question. Do I have to take it again if I already done it for commissioner, since I'm secretary of those of us on planning and zoning?
I filled mine out, and I just said no all the way down.
Well, I'll give them that, but I mean, I'm gonna give them about that.
Part of the setting,
I answered mine.
Well, moving right along,
And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
thank you, Mr. Barr.
Yeah.
We have item,
The adequacies and the set point on there.
item 8. Item 8, commissioner comments and general discussion. Anybody?
Just me,
Oh,
Mr.
Mr. Elwick.
In light of the information Mr. Barr had given me, I had chosen not to fill out that form and stuff, so I'll be tendering my resignation at this point. And I wanted to say I appreciate Mr. Gregory, 4 or 5 years ago, nominating me to come here on the board, and I appreciate all the experience that I've gotten from all you guys here.
It's enlightening, isn't it?
We'll miss you.
Well,
Sure will, Greg.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, gentlemen.
Got
I wish,
one.
and I'm really busy down there at the park and stuff, and there's a lot of, I have a hard time keeping work campers and stuff.
I just don't want to disclose all that money you're making down there.
Yeah, right, yeah. But other than that, that's it. I thank you, gentlemen, for the opportunity.
appreciate you being here this long. Yeah, great.
All right, anybody else? When is
Maybe.
it? Weird. Anybody else?
Maybe. I'll go with it. I'm not gonna put the money thing. They may disclose.
I don't know that they put, do they don't ask you about it?
They keep asking on it. Yes, you stop.
It's a range,
Everything.
It's a range.
Oh, rain.
It's really.
It's not an account.
Oh.
It is rather superficial, the form that you fill out. It's not,
They want it turned in. They don't care if you like, but just turn it in.
turn in.
Tell them.
Well, you wouldn't be a good politician if you told the truth.
I ain't a politician. I didn't run for no office.
When is it that you have in mind going over the thoroughfare plan, updating the thoroughfare plan for the city?
I don't have a timeline yet.
You
set
keep
for
talking
that.
about it, I keep hearing that word bannered about, and I wondered if it was in your, it's not on your immediate.
No, sir, it is not.
Okay.
But what is on my radar, I'll throw out there, is that as we're coming into fall, the Sumner County Planners Association is looking to set up their annual training, which is about a 4-hour seminar, if you will, for planning commissions and city commissions and Board of Zoning Appeals members. The state does require that the planning commission have at least 4 hours of planning-related education each year. If you do not have that, you are exposed to dismissal by the city commission. It's at their option, but I would highly recommend it. Last year, we had a pretty neat one that included real estate law that several of us attended and found pretty interesting.
Can one go for all of us?
And what's that?
Can one person go for all of
It's
it?
contingent on the
No,
food being
each,
good.
well, and actually, they had good, they fed us well.
They had
Well, you may want to stay long
Yeah,
enough to eat.
They fed us well.
Last year was good.
And,
They had chicken fettuccine.
oh, it was
Yeah, it was
wonderful.
good.
Yeah.
And Davis's bread. All right, thanks very much, gentlemen. There are nobody here for public comments, so I'm going to move right on to 11. Mr. Crouch has moved, we adjourn. You'll have a second.
Second.
Mr. Elwick, second. All in favor? Aye.
Did you sign for me, sir?
It's just, yeah, I know, it's just, I don't know, it's just something I believe in strongly. Like I said, for the most part, like
say you can lie about it, I guess. Right now, I mean, his lies are strong.
I saw people from Randy comments.
Well, they ask if you have any. You know.